Hey, what's up guys, it's Blake, and today we're going to be reviewing the 6th album from the world's heaviest pop punk band, A Day to Remember, called Bad Vibrations, out on A Day to Remember Records, but is being distributed by ADTR Records. It's a follow-up to 2013's Common Courtesy, which was recorded in the heat of a huge legal battle with Victory Records, which gave us some very spiteful and very angry songs about the label. That led me to think a lot of the songs weren't as well produced and well recorded and well written as well as they could have been due to all the distraction going on at the time at that point in the band's career. But here we have A Day to Remember level-headed and producing some great fucking tracks. A lot of people are saying this is their best album since Homesick. However, I definitely think it beats Common Courtesy and could see it being on the same level as Homesick, just if What Separates You From Me wasn't such an important record to myself. I think the best parts of this record, though, are hands down the heavier songs. They just hit so hard in some parts, and is probably some of their heaviest material. Exposed challenges Mr. Highway's Thinking About the End for their best breakdown in my opinion. But as a whole, the heavy songs in this record are absolutely riff city. But on the other hand, the pop punk songs really fell short for me. Naivety and Turn Off the Radio felt really pandery to me and just forcing the softer side of the record way too hard on the listener. I also felt this way about We Got This the first few times I heard it, but it eventually grew on me a ton. I feel like it's almost the same song as Right Back At It Again. It just feels very similar, like once the song actually gets into it in the topic as well. But anyway, I think it's a sick album, and let's talk about each individual track now. The album opens up with Bad Vibrations, which is the title track of the album. It starts off in this elongated intro with Jeremy just screaming over all this guitar feedback before going into the first heavy breakdown of the album. This was the second single released and was where I really started to get excited about the album. Despite being really heavy, this song definitely has the groove and one of the better choruses on the album. One thing I really loved about this song specifically is that there was not a single down point in the song. It was just constant energy from start to finish. It carried itself perfectly throughout its duration and flowed really well, especially into that last breakdown as well. The breakdown is really syncopated and not typically what I'd expect from A Day to Remember. However, my absolute favorite part of this track is the riff between the two breakdowns. It reminded me a ton of Lamb of God for some reason and absolutely blew me away. It's really a great opening track. Next up is Paranoia, which was released as the first single from the album. This song reminds me a ton of thrash metal for some reason. It felt really out of place when I first heard it, but the more I read about the album and the songs they had planned, it landed up being the only thrash style track that made the cut. Apparently there were a ton of B-sides that were very similar to it that obviously weren't on the album. But the biggest part of the song that led me to lean towards the thrash metal side is the call and response with the guitar riffs and the vocals. It's just a straight callback to that style of metal. I find it really interesting contrasted with the chorus that doesn't really live up to the intensity of the verses. However, the breakdown on this track feels very formulaic. It's stereotypical A Day to Remember style and very played out and very drawn out. The build-up in that style is pretty stale for them at this point. However, that really doesn't take away from my love for the song. I thought this was a very interesting choice for the lead single of the album, considering it's such an anomaly on the record. Next up is Naivety, which was released as the fourth single from the album, and easily my least favorite track on the record. I don't know what about this song makes me feel this way, but every time I listen to it, I just think Christmas. It's just probably the bells and whatnot in the intro to the song. Naivety is such an awkward word too, I don't think I've ever used that word in common conversation. The chorus is also super cliche, this is me, this is real, is this who I want to be? It just makes me uncomfortable listening to it. The song has no real direction either, just verse, chorus, bridge, chorus. Very formulaic. It definitely tries to be that slow, emotional, and reflective pop punk song that every A Day to Remember record has, but this one comes up very short. Not a favorite, would probably skip this song every time. Next up is Exposed, which is hands down one of my two favorite tracks on the record. It just sounds so dirty and just makes me want to punch small children. Just 10 out of 10 would hit to this. The entire first verse just brings the riffs. The chorus is kind of not my thing for the most part, but the way it transitions back into the verses and bridge makes it so sick. But let's talk about the breakdown. It's not your typical drawn out A Day to Remember breakdown. It's pretty spontaneous and random with the way the two guitars communicate with each other and interweave. It definitely catches you off guard with the way it all works out. This song is A Day to Remember at their best, really. This is what they were made to do and what they do best. The last final scream about no war and no peace is just fierce. It sounds like a fucking lion. I thought Jeremy was having some vocal issues recently with some of the live performances I've seen, but this album has like definitely solidified that that's not the case at all. The album closes out its first half with Bullfight, which was released as the third single from the album and was my favorite of the 5 singles they released actually. This song was just so different than Paranoia and Bad Vibrations that it stuck out so well to me. It's such an interesting song when it comes to the instrumentation. All of the tones used in it are so dark and dreary. It really sucks out all of the positive energy of the album and turns it into this negative force. I honestly didn't know what to think about the first few times I heard it, just because I wasn't used to this style of writing from these guys. But it's another breakdown we need to talk about. I'm about 90% sure there are like swords clashing in it. Like, I have no idea what the noises are in it, but I just picture 2 knights just like dueling in the background while this plays. That's probably the weirdest thing I've ever said in a review, but oh well. Definitely an interesting touch to what would have been another run-of-the-mill breakdown from these guys. The album opens up its second half with Reassemble, which is just such a huge song. This is probably the defining song from this album for me, just because of that huge intro, huge chorus, and the ending. Jeremy's vocals sound so big throughout the entire song, but the choruses are absolutely mind-blowing. The way they flow through the huge vocal line to the reprise of the breakdown is unreal. Another song that 10 out of 10 would throw hammers during. I may actually like the song better than Exposed, probably. This song makes me feel literally like I can do anything. That's also one of the few times in my life where I've liked a song that fades to acoustic. It's just so weird because it's such a polar listening experience coming from those huge breakdowns into such a soft ending. We just go from this blistering song to Jeremy singing in this low and dull vocal tone. I think it's really the album's masterpiece, and it makes me emo. Next up is Justified, which is another song that definitely brings the riffs. Dude, I just love guitar riffs like that. Like, just the guitar player in me that's just like yelling at my friends like, do you hear that fucking riff? And it's like, as they have no idea what I'm absolutely talking about. The chorus guitar part is so sick. It's just another little section of this album that reminds me a ton of some like deep metalcore work. But again, this is another hugely contrasting song. The verses are so dark and almost a little genty, but the chorus is very bright and very major. And this just swings back and forth throughout the entire song. Technically speaking, this song is very confusing, but when you just naturally listen to it, it flows really well, which is not easy to make work. My favorite part of this song, though, is the re-intro around, I think, 2.5 minutes in. It just guides the song to the bridge, which is like the major climax of the song. This song reminds me a ton of Bullet for My Valentine for some weird reason. I probably know what you're thinking. I don't get it either, but it happens. Next up is We Got This, which is the big pop punk song on the album. A Day to Remember's favorite thing to do in the world is sing about a day to remember and their weird adventures in their band's history, and this is just another song about that. I think they had like 4 or 5 songs just about being in a band on Common Courtesy. It was weird. This isn't a bad sign by any means, but this isn't what this album really should be about for me. The heavy songs really blow this one away. I just found it hard to take this like heartfelt song seriously after hearing Reassemble and Justified back to back. This song definitely has its place on the album, I guess, but it's just poor placement. Definitely not a favorite and definitely not a least favorite either. Next up is Same About You, which is a song I keep forgetting about for some reason. Literally just I forget it exists on this album until I listen to it. The song starts and I'm like, this is so boring. And then the chorus hits literally out of nowhere and it just hits so hard. It really catches me off guard literally every time I listen to it. I'm so tempted to skip it, but then I remember how good the chorus is, so I stay around for that and I'm blown away every time. But the other favorite part of the song is the guitar solo. More bands need to bring back guitar solos. They're majorly lacking in modern music. 2017 needs to be the year of guitar solos. I need somebody to make that happen. But again, I really love most of this song. It's just hard to remember it for that really slow opening section of the song. But once it gets into it, it's awesome. Second to last on the album is Turn Off the Radio, which I think is like the whiniest song I've ever heard these guys put out. I literally thought complaining about the radio was a trope that we were finished with in alternative music. Like, it's over, we get it, the radio isn't good, and you all have so much better things to say. Honestly, who cares? You're not pop musicians, you're not gonna get radio airplay, and no one's gonna spin this on XM either. Just deal with it. This song just bothers me because pop music isn't supposed to have like a stance on major issues and problems and be so introspective and so deep. It's bubblegum pop for a reason. Like, everybody chews it, but no one swallows it. The song just makes me angry a little bit. They need to get over themselves in this one, I think. Yeah. The album closes with Forgive and Forget, which I'm really tempted to say is just about Victory Records, but I'm not going to just because there is so much bad blood with that lawsuit that I can't see them getting over it this quickly. The lyrical content just makes so much sense though when it's applied to that whole situation. I'm gonna refrain from making a definitive call because I'm just scared of being wrong on this one. However, I do really like this song. It's like the designated soft song on the album. It's definitely more of a mature cut than past slow songs that have just been about a girl and they've put out like that. It's refreshing, I like it a lot. I also really like how it builds up throughout the entire song until it ends in a huge like emotional flurry before fading out. It's really well written and really nicely put together and really a great finisher to the album. Overall, I really like the album despite some songs on this that I really don't like. It's a really great album and really a mature album for them as well as they grow away from that Victory lawsuit. I think it's definitely better than Common Courtesy and could even be in the same conversation as Homesick. The instrumental work is amazing throughout the entire album. I love it a lot, and Jeremy's vocal work and lyricism is the best it's been in a very, very long time. This album is probably going to be the soundtrack of my fall, and I give this one an 8 out of 10. Definitely let me know what you think in the comments below, and thank you for watching.